Welcome back to Morning Express. It's time for The Way It Is, where we weigh in on what's happening politically and, just have that discussion. Remember, you're welcome to join into the discussion. We'll be opening up the phone lines not too long from now, and you're free to call and also participate in the debate. Feel free to agree, disagree, or support what will be said by our panelists this morning. Let me introduce the panel that we have this morning. To my extreme left, we have Senator for Mombasa County. He's also the Secretary General for Wiper Movement, and that is Omar Hassan. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
We also have Ambrose Weda, who is a lawyer. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. And right from earlier on, we've had Professor Michael Wainaina, who is a political and education blogger, and joining us as well. Thank you. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning. This is The Way It Is. Let's start with what's on the headlines on the Daily Nation, and that is NASA leaders fighting to calm split fears, and that's what's on the headline. And I'll start with you with Senator Omar Hassan. Basically, is there trouble in the camp? There was...
Well, first and foremost, I remember I spoke to Honorable Raila Odinga. There was an issue I'd raised with him about a week and a half, at the point I was leaving the country. He told me, I will be back on the morning of Monday, the 20th, which
That's
I think
today.
Which is today.
Mm-hmm.
For any, I want as journalists, human is to error. Don't go around concocting stories. And I can see the Daily Nation. I believe there are two credible publications in this country in terms of their professional etiquette. The Daily Nation and The Standard. I hold you to highest professional standards. The rest are like the Star, they're just sensational. They publish any rumor. Sit down with any journalist, tell them the rumor, you'll see it on the front, on the splash. But these ones, there's a bit of diligence. So if you published a headline yesterday saying how Raila is coming into Kenya for a crisis meeting, and then you realize it is not the truth, all I see the nation attempting to do is to sustain its narrative. Rather than acknowledge that they have made a mistake, constantly trying to stock ambers of division. So acknowledging this, you've made a mistake. In other times, you're fairly accurate in your reporting. So those few times where you make mistakes, you must admit it. Mm-hmm. So you create a sensational headline for a Sunday publication. Sundays are one of the most well-read. And then you realize you want to maintain the credibility of your readership. But the readership also acknowledges that when you make mistakes and withdraw this, and I'll be able to say we withdraw, then it's also a good thing. So I can tell you, you can get away with, the Star can get away with these small things, okay, probably, but not the nation. I'm coming to that because I'm very particular that this is a political time. You do not want Weda to come to your office and pretend he has a scoop for you. And then you start to concoct a theory that doesn't exist.
Around that. So, okay, fine. It may not be factual that Raila is coming back for a crisis meeting, but that does not negate the fact that there might be trouble in the camp.
Number two, there is no crisis to that extent where I will say this. On Friday, James Orengo said Raila will be the presidential candidate. And he pitched for Raila Odinga. I did not see anything wrong in that. I do not think James Orengo has been paid by Jubilee. Neither do I think James Orengo has become a mole. The people who are creating the problem, and I want to borrow on the narrative of the party, Kalonzo Musyoka yesterday, is when I speak strongly as the Secretary General of a party that Kalonzo Musyoka should be the presidential candidate. There's some busybody somewhere, blogger, who starts to concoct stories after stories on their blogs. How I am now a Jubilee functionary, how I am paid to split the opposition, how I am a mole. When you pitch as an ANC, or the next time Wetangula says he wants to be president, he wants to be the flag bearer, you hear the same bloggers will go and say that Wetangula and Chris Wamalwa together with Eseli were seen walking out of State House, carrying 25 million shillings. and they put it in these blogs that they usually control. There's some Kenya Today, I don't know, whatever others. So they spew this and they drive it and drive it and drive it on the social media. So what then they do is to now create anxiety. So then what happens, then the mainstream media now picks it, because maybe the conversation is so passionate on the social media or the alternative media that now the mainstream has to pick it and try to formalize something. Mm-hmm. So then the net effect is now for you, Michael, to call me and say, is there a split in NASA? And then I would say, there's no split. And then you say, Secretary General denied a split. So did Kalonzo Musyoka deny any split. So did Raila Odinga deny any split. I can tell you for a fact, there are definitely challenges to managing a coalition of interests. There are definitely challenges when you're telling a human being to step down his ambition for another. There are definitely challenges in terms of getting a family of whatever nature to live together in a political context. But definitely, I am confident that NASA will name a presidential flag bearer, because that's the point, the case and issue, because nobody else wants to see what the agenda is or naming what your programs are. We will name that presidential candidate, and hopefully NASA will stay together.
All right. Do you agree that there's actually no trouble in the camp? There's actually nothing wrong, despite the fact that there seems to be a timing thing here where we had Kalonzo Musyoka hand in his, basically declare he is the Wiper Party presidential candidate, although that was kind of, has been all along.
Let me say this and let me repeat. There will be no NASA without Raila as the presidential candidate. In fact, the moment NASA says it's not Raila, there will be no NASA. And the language from Honorable Raila Odinga is clear. The arrangements are clear. Sometimes he organizes his own rallies, which get crashed by the Wiper leaders and the Amani leaders. They get crashed, and you hear that.
That's a rally that I'm telling you. That's our rally.
We only see choppers, please. You can see they are circumlocuting when it comes to these issues. I know that Mheshimiwa Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka either is angling so that he's not edged out as a running mate, or he also knows that the Kamba people will not continue this desert that Honorable Raila put them in, the desert of opposition. So question as to whether they'll name a candidate, whatever, that's out. And when Baba is out,
so as far as you're concerned, there is no other presidential candidate other than Raila.
That's obvious.
So why
in fact, it's as broad. The question is who will be the running mate. I think Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka fears that Raila has a softer heart for Musalia Mudavadi. And Mudavadi's team has a bigger vote basket and is more quieter than Honorable Kalonzo. So he's fighting to raise stakes so that Kalonzo becomes the running mate, and then Musalia and Wetangula are left in the wilderness to wait for the future. And now that is where the stake is. Who will be asked to wait for a position to be created after a referendum, or just to wait in the bench just in case? And that is where the problem is. But the ticket is Raila's. They know it. They know, it's obvious.
Prof, your thoughts on Weda's comments and also Senator?
Three things. There is trouble in NASA. But the trouble in NASA is not what Jubilee are hoping. The trouble in NASA is what Omar has said, that there are players within NASA who are not honest. There are players within NASA who are concocting stories that are being picked by mainstream media and social media, and then these stories are projected as if there is a big problem in NASA. Mm-hmm. I have said continuously that the argument by Jubilee that not naming a presidential candidate in NASA is a crisis, that argument does not make sense. Because number one, why is Jubilee concerned? I mean, if it is a crisis, then they should be happy about it. They shouldn't be telling them to name a presidential candidate. So is there trouble in NASA? Yes. Is the trouble the fact that they have not named a presidential candidate? Yeah. I don't think so. But more importantly, number three, is what Omar is saying, that politics is about domination. And we have seen over the last 2 weeks, Wiper stamping its authority in NASA and doing things that tell the other players that we are ready to play ball. I do not know whether the spoilers in NASA that Omar was talking about are responding to an aggressive and revamped Wiper. because you remember last time Kalonzo presenting his nomination papers, and there is a lot of activity around the fact that Wiper want Kalonzo to be the flag bearer. So is there trouble in NASA? Yes. Is the trouble the fact that they have not named a presidential candidate? No. Is there an effort by the players inside NASA to be the dominant ones and therefore to up their stakes when they come to discuss the issues of candidate? Yes. Is there anything wrong with that? I don't think so.
All right.
I think I wanted to concur. There is a general narrative that is being pushed that Raila is incapable of sacrifice. I think Raila has the capacity and potential to determine what will be the winning electoral formula. The only narrative I disagree, even internally, is to present a narrative that Raila is unelectable. So why would you tell me Raila cannot be elected, but Raila Tosha is the magic? If I don't have the votes to elect myself, how will I have the votes to transfer to you? So what I want us to do is to evaluate without any dogmas or narratives, particularly that one of Jubilee. The Jubilee will tell you, give us Raila, and we are done. We will beat him, without those factoring those narratives of Jubilee, without factoring those the biases and innuendos against any other candidate. Much in the same way, I see a reckless young man or woman, and they create a pattern of conversation that Kalonzo's 1.5, 2 million votes count for very little. You know, others will, every time their memories are evoked, or their emotions are evoked on the basis that Kalonzo has said passionately that he wants to be president, or for that matter, Mudavadi, they call them watermelons, they call them all kinds of fruits. You know, all types of names. I think people must appreciate political competition is legitimate. I started becoming everything else when I decided that I was running against the deputy Baba. You know, so I became a mall, I have become Jubilee, I have become all sorts of things.
Sarai.
Yes, Sarai is my name. So that itself must not be allowed, you know, it cannot be the conduct of our political competition. And I'm happy that in the constituencies that are predominantly our strongholds, those narratives of moles and molds do not hold. Okay. Actually, we critique and objectively look at the picture.
All right, away from the mole narrative and all that, as one of the most influential leaders in this country, Senator, are we going to get to a point where we can discuss issues that the people can look forward to when whoever it is that comes into government? Or, because the narrative I've had, if you look at most of what was happening over the weekend, all you'll hear is that we are coming together to beat Jubilee. We are coming together to beat NASA. Is there a time Kenyans can look forward to where we can literally discuss issues, how they're going to benefit Kenyans, as opposed to just coming together as a group to beat Jubilee?
We try to direct that conversation through the agreement to the issue focus is that that NASA intends to address itself to the 7-point plan, the code of conduct, integrity issues. All said and done, when the media has reported that day of the signing of the instruments, all said and done, then they ended by saying, but we failed to name our flag bearer. So every time you return the conversation, and I do appreciate that is the most important thing people are waiting from NASA. Even the Jubilee right now, for them, what they need to know is who is NASA's flag bearer. Everybody in the country wants to know. I go and sit down even with some of these friends who appear very composed all the time. The first question is, "Kwendaje, bro?"
The reason why.
We need to respond. I'm confident. I mean, in fact, I'm one of those who said it again and again. We must get done with this flag bearer thing once and for all.
And is it possible, Senator, the reason why many people are concentrating on having the NASA flag bearer named is because we don't have anything we can say NASA represents, such that now it becomes a point of concentration who the leader is going to be. Because if there was a very good conversation around what NASA stands for and is going to do for Kenyans, it should not even matter who the presidential candidate. It could be you, for all you care, because they're going to represent them.
Michael, you know what NASA stands for. Based on the pieces of interventions that we've held, or at various intervals of this country's Jubilee's political life. When we speak about the standard gauge railroad, when we speak about NYS, when we speak about the drought, when we speak about the doctors' strike, when we speak about ethnicity, those are the counter policies to what Jubilee is doing. The opposition doesn't have to put each and every time they talk about ethnicity, they don't have to they don't have to publish a blueprint. So I think to the contrary, my assessment is CORD, for that matter, before NASA, had done very well. Despite the minimum resources, a literally raided household. We had about 100 plus members in the National Assembly and the Senate. By the time we were thinking we were crossing this year, they had been severely diminished. So based on that, but the brigade stayed focused. The few people who carved a niche, is on the basis of their consistency. When you talk about John Mbadi, when you talk about James Orengo, when you talk about Boni Halwale, and the rest are the people who have remained focused on this discourse. Trust me on that one, because when others were constantly declaring the support for Jubilee. So this means that the resource itself to raid and to sustain an onslaught, to ensure that Jubilee does not go excessive in its misrule, was well done. In my assessment, the opposition did well, and that is a counter narrative.
I can see you basically denying. But just before you give your rebuttal, just a reminder that the phone lines are now open and you're welcome to participate.
He has mentioned a litany of jokers like Halwale, Mbadi's, what. One thing which is clear, a Raila presidency would be different from a Kalonzo presidency or a Mudavadi presidency. That is why it is crucial to know who is likely to be the president. Apart from the dances, the rumba that they do on rallies,
even
essentially there's very little for us to be able to tell what they have on the table. That's why we are anxious to know, is it going to be the theatrics and opposition of Raila Odinga, or the nice dresses of Kalonzo Musyoka, or just cluelessness of Musalia Mudavadi? Is that what we are going to have?
Why you mention Wetangula?
Wetangula is not in the question. Wetangula is just like Weda, my brother. It's just to add names that we have these people. But we are talking about now, Kenya is reaching where we are being very serious. And there are only 3 now in NASA, and one of them, Raila Odinga, will be president. Then these 2, one will be running mate, another one will be in the forest. That is clear. One thing you asked, which should be addressed, are we going to have a time when we will not be able to address tribal conglomerates? The answer is yes. And the answer lies in the current constitution. If even the current parliament was strong enough to share resources as a country so that people realize that it does not matter whether President Uhuru is a Kikuyu from Kiambu and therefore the advantages, or Raila Odinga, a Luo or a lawyer from wherever, there are extra advantages because one of your own is president. People will realize then at this rate, we need a good person who will manage resources for all of us. But for now, there is hope that when Weda becomes president, then his Luo colleagues will be better off.
But now, Jubilee has been unable to do that as well, because when we look at also their campaign strategy, there's nothing to do, apart from, okay, what they'll call their scorecard, which of course is questionable.
Yes.
Most of it is basically attacks on individuals.
Now, let me tell you, my brother, let's be fair. First of all, Jubilee itself did the unthinkable. Combine the combatants, the Luo, the Kalenjins, and the Kikuyus who fought under Raila and Kibaki in 2007. They fought bitterly on different sides. They combined them and they voted together and they say, hallelujah.
But now, after combining them, have they excluded the rest of the communities?
They have not excluded. How? They are in cabinet. Except now, because of the feeling that if you don't include the tribal bigwigs, if Honorable Kalonzo is not there, Kambas are not there, it doesn't matter whether Mailu is in there. Okay? If Honorable Raila Odinga or Orengo is not there, it doesn't matter whether Rachel Omamo is there. That's the narrative. Let us change that so that we know. If the standard really is done by Uhuru Kenyatta, they say, oh, that was a grand coalition government. If anything good is done, because of the tribal bigotry that we keep on, the propaganda. But I'm telling you, slowly Kenyans are looking at what has been done. When the president read is the nation of the State of the Nation address, people here saw and realized, majority of us said, kumbe, work has been done.
You
And then that is why,
please
please listen.
realized on that day,
Please,
has been
you
done.
know, your propaganda had polluted the air so much. Your propaganda and dances and theatrics. But the reality is that...
All right, Weda, let me hear from Prof. In terms of issue-based politics, should we look forward to that, or is that a piped dream for Kenyans?
Michael, it is not true to say that NASA has no agenda.
Thank you.
It is not true to say that NASA has not placed its issues on the table. Michael, NASA has an agenda. It is a tribal coalition of tribal kingpins who are looking for power. That's the agenda.
That's the agenda.
So don't say it doesn't have an agenda.
Prof, I was just saying, congratulations. I was about
saying thank you.
to laud him.
Yes, and that's the truth.
Am I a kingpin of a tribe?
No, you have three kingpins and a wannabe. And Weda has named the wannabe and the three kingpins. Yes. So when we sit here, Michael, and say, these people don't have an agenda, these people don't have, they have an agenda. A tribal conglomeration of three tribal kingpins and a wannabe who are trying to be a counterbalance for the tribal kingpins in Jubilee. So that is the agenda. Let us not push the narrative that NASA is going to give us a new agenda or a different agenda or a new issue. That's it. And even, Michael, the reason why they are unable to name a presidential candidate right now is because they are still doing the tribal arithmetic, okay? If we put this one, Omar was talking about Kalonzo's 1.8 million votes and the other one, votes. Those are the things, and I will refer you to an article that was done by ODM's Secretary General, Zani. And that article was challenging the tyranny of numbers argument. And they, in ODM, were giving their narrative by giving their tribal figures. Okay? So that when we ask whether NASA is going to put an agenda on the table, it has already put the agenda on the table, and the agenda is a conglomeration of tribal kingpins. That is number one. Number two, Weda is wrong when he says that ethnicity is brought about by resources. Remember that the new constitution was supposed to cure the problem of resources. Have resources been devolved to the devolved units? Yes, maybe not as much as you and I would want, but do we have an argument that should have started to see a reduction of ethnic competition at the national level? Yes, we do.
Let me pause you first and just take a call. Robert in Langata. Good morning, Robert. Thank you for calling and to your comment or question. Robert.
Thank you so much. This is Robert waiting from Langata. I'm really enjoying the show.
Thank you.
I want just to say one thing. This.
Hello? Robert from Langata, we seem to have lost or dropped the call.
I'm online. Hello? Hello?
Okay, we cannot hear him here in studio, so maybe we'll try and sort that out. Okay, we can hear you now, Robert. Go right ahead.
Hello?
Yes?
I'm getting you.
Okay, go ahead.
I want just to contribute one thing. This is my observation.
Yes, go right ahead.
I'm really shocked with I'm really shocked.
Why?
Hello?
Yes, go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, the discussion here, I'm listening. I can see Lawyer Weda and Professor Wanaina. They're really out of touch with the things on the ground.
Why?
The way they are talking about the group of tribal conglomeration of the NASA brigade, I completely disagree with them.
Okay.
Even in Jubilee, we have a tribal leader.
That doesn't make it right, though, but carry on.
Okay, they are not coming from the blues. They are all Kenyans. from a certain tribe. Even now, they are all Kenyans from a certain tribe. But the fact is here, the Jubilee Brigade are really hype things which are not real on the ground. Even yesterday, you saw what even you saw yesterday in the news, and there's one of the television channel saying that it's not true that the connectivity of the electricity is not the way the president put it during his national address. So there's a lot of lies that Jubilee is trying to put on the table, which is not the true and the fact on the ground.
Okay, so your point is that Jubilee is not very truthful, but at the same time that the tribal narrative on NASA is not true.
Exactly.
Thank you.
All these are national leaders. They are not tribal at all. A person like Raila, a person like Kalonzo, these are national leaders. They are not tribal at all at any given point.
Thank you very much, Robert. Let's take a call from Kitui in Kitale. Good morning, and thank you for calling. Kitui? Kitui from Kitale, good morning, and thank you for calling. To your comment, and I'll request that you keep it as short as possible.
Morning, Mike.
Morning to you.
Yes, I have 2 comments to make.
Go right ahead.
I don't want to agree with the panelists who are talking about NASA lacking an agenda.
Okay.
And if the agenda is there, is a tribal one. Let me point this out. The issues NASA raised, the 7 points NASA raised, we should have a specific idea, or it should actually trigger our direction towards thinking that the things they raised are actually going to form part of what they're going to campaign against or for to the nation. Secondly, I also want to concur with Omar Hassan that Raila Odinga, every time we talk about a NASA candidate and Raila Odinga comes up to be the preferred candidate, the Jubilee Brigade seems to say that Raila is unelectable. If at all Raila is unelectable, then it means whoever he supports will still not win. Now, my thinking will be, it will be a wrong approach by the Jubilee people that we dismiss this just because Raila is there. We dismiss this just because we're calling them tribal kingpin. Jubilee should come up with a counter strategy to stop any means NASA will use to snatch power from them. Because, number one, they want to snatch power from them. Number two, they have something they want to give to Kenya. We can talk about what Trump has done in the U.S. Trump was unelectable to a lot of people, including the press. Now, today, Raila is unelectable to a lot of people in Jubilee, including the press. But what happens if he is elected? So we need to give these people a chance so that we counter that narrative and give Kenyans something that Jubilee will give. Jubilee did not do in the last 4 years. That can go in the next 5 years.
All right, Kitui, I think we've got your point. Let me take a call from Mombasa, and that's Jared in Mombasa. Good morning, and thank you for calling. Jared in Mombasa, to your comment.
Yes, I wanted to give 2 of my views in accordance with the contribution I'm making. You gather all the Kenyans together instead of waiting for Jubilee to clash on you, waiting to say the right time is coming, well, it's running to race. Still, we are so eager, waiting to hear NASA saying that someone is going to be against Jubilee.
All right.
Because we believe that NASA, the team to change our lives, because things are going badly on our state.
All right, thank you very much, Jared. I'll take the last call now. For now, Moses in Nairobi. Good morning, Moses.
Hello.
Yes, good morning. Moses in Nairobi?
Yeah.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning.
Yeah, I want to just say one thing.
Okay.
That Kenyans have become very wise. And the professor and Weda can't lie to Kenyans.
Okay.
So I want to tell them that we know that Jubilee is a combination of tribal cocoons. and he can't substitute that to NASA because NASA is an inclusive government.
Now, Moses, let me just ask you, what makes NASA not a tribal conglomerate? Because that's the argument you're making.
NASA combines Kamba.
That's a tribe?
NASA combines
Luya?
NASA combines
Luo? That's a
and
tribe? Okay.
In the last rallies that you have seen, NASA have.
So my question is, if that is a representation of the nation, where are Kalenjins, where are Pokots, where are Giriamas in that whole arrangement?
Okay, can't you see the governor of Bometa, Isaac Ruto, stepping into NASA? Are those not Kalenjins? When NASA team visited Eldoret, didn't you see the crowd and the mood of the crowd? This is an indication that Kenyans have changed and they have become very wise.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Moses. Let's go to Kisumu. George Onyango in Kisumu.
Let's go to Kisumu. George Onyango in Kisumu.
Yes, George.
Yes, hello.
And kindly put your television off or put the volume off, otherwise we'll not be able to communicate. George, go right ahead.
Now, are you hearing me?
I can hear you.
A very good guy, but currently you want to keep people along the middle because the country...
What has made him suddenly change? What is it that he has said that has made him change so that we get to the point?
Yeah, I'm saying this, just get my point, because I'm saying like in Kenya, we must like appreciate that we are from Kenya and we are from different tribes. That one must be taken into account.
Okay.
And again, it is important that the histories of this country sometimes we must find a way on how to harmonize, because we know the histories of the country, on where the country has come from and the tribes that have been like in the power, and we want to demonize all these things and then put a country to be one. That is why we are saying we want equity. The equity that we want currently, you can even see, we don't want cases where when you go to the cabinet post, get to the transport cost, the transport sector, you find there is somebody Macharia, the principal secretary gets there, somebody room, get to, that is the narrative that we want to do away with. When you get to the Attorney General, you find like the 13 official comes from one side.
All right.
So we want equity. Somebody like Weda is coming from Kisumu, we know, but we want him to contribute equally for the equity of his people. Can you tell us that currently even the ministry post within the country, how many are in Nyanza?
Okay.
And you're saying you are in Jubilee. The equity, the equitable sharing of the resources should go pro rata along the country.
All right, George Onyango, I'll have to cut you short. I think we've got your point. Thank you very much for calling, and we need to come back to the panel because time is not on our side. Professor Michael, I'll stick it as Professor Michael for now.
For obvious reasons.
For obvious reasons. But you're obviously not very popular today, and maybe in your defense, what you have to say about, well, there was Robert in Langata who, first of all, said that NASA is made of national leaders.
Michael, there is a serious problem in this country. It is assumed that if you sit here and criticize NASA, you are endorsing Jubilee. It is assumed that if you sit here and criticize Jubilee, you are endorsing NASA.
It's either or.
And that is a problem with this country. My world, Michael, is not divided into NASA and Jubilee. I actually do not believe that there is a difference between the two. So when I sit here and say these are the problems in NASA, I am not saying that Jubilee is clean. And when I sit here and say these are the problems with Jubilee, I'm not saying that NASA is clean. That is number one. Number two, I would like to finish the point I was making before we went through the calls. And I was saying that we have a new constitution that envisaged a situation where we solve the resource problems that Weda is talking about. So theoretically, with the new constitution, we should have de-escalated ethnicity, not escalated it. But what has happened is that because the current political class in NASA and Jubilee rely on tribal and ethnic politics, even when we have solved or tried to solve the resource allocation issues, the tribal political class cannot let go of the ethnic narrative because they have nothing else to offer to the people. You have heard somebody telling us that NASA is so national because it has Luyas, it has Luos, it has Kambas. He is advancing a tribal narrative upon which NASA is built. And I would like to school Kenyans on the difference between tribe and tribalism. Tribe is a cultural fact. I am Kikuyu. There is nothing wrong with that. He is what he is. There's nothing wrong with that. Omar is what he is. There's nothing wrong with that. That's called tribe. It's a cultural fact. Tribalism is the use of that fact to include or to exclude. So the problem with the caller is that Jubilee has used the fact of tribe to exclude them. Okay? So what have they done? They have now conglomerated around tribe to exclude Jubilee. And that is a problem with tribalism, that one side excludes, then the other one, because now it is including the ones who have been left out, imagines that they are less tribal than somebody else. They are not any less tribal. Having said that, there's somebody who said that Jubilee is saying, give us Raila, give us Raila, give us Raila. My advice to NASA people is, the last people from whom you should take advice of whom your presidential candidate should be is Jubilee. So when Jubilee have all interest in making sure you pick the wrong candidate. So don't wait for Jubilee to advise you. Sit down, make your own decision. And number 4, Michael, there's a guy who said Kenyans have wisened up. All I would want to do is to remind him that myself and Weda and Omar are also Kenyans.
Absolutely. Coming to you, Senator.
I want to say 2 things. Every rally I've stood in the NASA rally, I've tried to deconstruct this issue of tribe. In fact, it is actually my punchline. I do not end a single NASA rally without saying it, because we need to deconstruct this narrative that NASA will be a Luhya, Kamba, or Luo government. In fact, I say it will not be any of these governments. It will be a government representative of all. I believe I might not be a principal in the strictest sense, but I leverage my own little influence in this whole game. And the truth is, when I see a travesty, I will speak out. And that's the whole idea. But I see the over-enthusiasm, sometimes by even the tribal followership of some of our leaders, who believe that maybe if Raila or Kalonzo or Wetangula and when the Mudavadi become presidents, there are people who will populate of government. So that's far from the truth. In fact, my argument will be, once you have the presidency, you probably do not deserve more than 1 cabinet ministry. If you want to really balance the equation for people to start to believe that you do not have to have your man or woman in State House for you to enjoy what is inalienably a right of every citizen of the Republic of Kenya.
So
that is one. And I know, but unfortunately, though, going into 2017, the math is still tribal. Today, I have a competitor in Mombasa who the guy's unit of discussion is so irritatingly ethnic. You speak with him one-on-one, he's talking about, there are many communities. You speak to him, he talks about religion, and not because these petitions do really exist, they do, but he's capitalizing on these divisions. So that also, it constitutes tribalism. When you use tribe as a unit of political organization, it's ethnicity, it's tribalism. So constantly, he's engineering this. It's telling you how he has to negotiate. But the truth is, why I come in, I say I want to give you a formula of good government that anybody will be reassured that when you look at Hassan Omar, you see your tribe in him because he's fair to all. That's what we need, a leader who I look at and we say, that Michael Kitonga, he might be Kikuyu by extraction, but he's Kenyan, he's Luhya, he's Kalenjin, he's Kamba, he's Digo, he's everything. Because you embody that. So, but that is now bringing in the higher threshold of the political conversation in this country. We can't constantly be allowing ourselves to bring down our political conversation to the basic unit. And then ultimately, I have to make this comment. Professor is an academic, and I totally respect his views. But where there's a politician in his own right, So his views are derogatory. His views are often intended for derogation. In my own sense, Senator Wetangula has done an excellent job as our leader in the Senate and a co-principal in the CORD coalition for 4 years. He has galvanized the national psyche. For them, even when what do you call Atuoli purportedly appointed a spokesperson, his opinion poll said that Mudavadi had 39%, assuming that opinion poll is accurate, and Wetangula was at 32%. So there is a 32%, for instance, leverage in Western Kenya, because they says it was based on the Western Kenya desire. So it is very unfortunate for you in your own way to just dismiss an individual who I believe his exit or his staying there brings value.
Brings value. We need to have your closing comments. Whether
anyway, give us Wetangula. That's what we want as to believe as your presidential candidate, NASA, and you will see what we will do. The other three we fear, but that one, we are ready. What I can say is this.
This guy is derogatory.
No, let me get closing comments from...
No, you should speak with a little bit of respect. He's a senior counsel. He's an author.
I respect him.
He's an author.
He's only
a teacher. He's a teacher to all. And then when he speaks, look at...
But I respect Honorable Tam. I respect him as my senior colleague. Is this dancing thing that is making this? But let me say this. We are still at this stage conglomerating along tribal lines. That is a fact. But I foresee in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 elections, especially when sharing of resources will not be based on who is at State House. Sharing of positions will not be based on whether or not your cousin is the president. People will decongest and decolonize their minds, and they will then start looking for leaders. And it won't matter whether Wainaina is the president. So I think there is hope, there is future, and it will do well.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll have to wind up right there. Senator Omar Hassan, Senator Mombasa County, Ambrose Wede, who's a lawyer, and Professor Michael Wainaina, who is a political and educational blogger. Thank you very much. That's the way it is. And also for all of you that called and participated in one way or the other, I've not even had time to look at the tweets, but we'll be going through them as we continue. So thank you so very much for joining us. For now, this is where we part ways with KTN Home, because it's going to be life and style from here. For those of us on KTN News, or those of us who are going to move to KTN News, well, we've got some news updates coming up. Then later on, Robin Toskin is in studio to give us a sports chat. We'll be right back.